Landmines and jellyfish, welcome back to Knives, I guess, and just thank you for being here. I don't say that often enough. But do me a favor and hit that like button or the terrorists win. And for the last week we've been carrying the Cobalt 2.4-inch D2 knife. Now, this is courtesy of Saints EDC. He sent this to me as part of a trade, so let's take a second to thank him for making this happen. And let's take a look at what we're holding, because it'll bother you if I don't. And you know I love you. So, first things first, and most importantly, the pocket clip is tip up, which is the Lord's carry. We have got steel frame with steel liners and steel scales. There we are. We have got a thumb stud. Let's flick the stud. And of course, 2.4 inches of D2 steel. Okay, now that that's out of the way, this is one of those things where I think he said it was a $15 pickup at Lowe's. So we are looking at Lowe's finest wares here. And I gotta say, mediocrity. This thing's very mediocre. Now, this could be a lot worse, but, you know, one of the first things that really jumped up and grabbed us by the short and curlies was, of course, the factory edge. That factory edge was in the 200s. It wasn't necessarily happy with life. Saint said that his came in a lot sharper than mine did, but this one came in pretty dull. So it's seen some use. Let's take a look at where that factory edge is sitting with our electronic edge tester after we attempt to cut up some paper. All right, come on. Yeah. Oh, gross. Trust me, I'm not doing this on purpose. Yeah. So why don't we try this one last time, and let's see if we can mark. Oh, you guys, this is so bad. No, we may have just gotten the one good cut out of it. Come on, we're trying here. We're trying, guys. Okay, so when I'm doing my live streams, and I want to know which part of the edge to check, I will cut until I find the big snag. I'll mark that off, and that's the area I will focus the testing on. I'll test other areas, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to test that one little spot right there out, because I fed it some cardboard. And at first it was doing okay. And then it decided it didn't want to do okay anymore. But, of course, this electronic edge tester was kindly provided by you guys through your channel memberships, your super chat donations, what have you. I will always be grateful for the support. Thank you for that. But how this thing works, if you have not seen one before, and almost all of you have, is it measures the number of grams of force it takes to cut through the wire on this calibrated test clip. The lower the number, the better. So let's see where we're at. We're probably going to take a couple of tests just to see how much wear we've incurred, because I think we were in the 220s somewhere in that window whenever we first tested this thing. So here's the snag. 225. Okay. So that's not awful. You know, it's not too far off from where it was initially whenever I tested it the first time. Let's go a little farther back on the blade. And you guys are getting a peek under the skirts. Like when we're testing during the live streams, this is what we're doing. We're testing multiple areas and trying to see if we can find where the bad spot is. 248. Okay, so not too shabby. It's just that edge does not like being fed paper. So the edge being at that 220s, I'm happy to see that it didn't drop too much after that. I'm happy to see that it didn't drop too much from the last test that we did. And of course, as you move around, your numbers are going to change a little bit, and this gives you a ballpark idea what's going on. It's not the most scientifically accurate thing on the planet, but it gives you a good idea how your edge is doing. Because I fed it some cardboard, and, you know, the first couple of cuts through that were pretty easy to control. They felt nice. The only problem I had was the blade being this short. They just kind of dropped out of the cut on me because I'm used to a 3-inch plus blade. But then I fed it some double wall cardboard. I found some double wall cardboard at work, so I said, hey, we're going to give her a couple of cuts, and it did not like that at all. It did not like the double wall cardboard one bit. I was able to force it through more or less, but it still did a lot of tearing and rolling on it. And Of course, we were doing the plastic wrap on the pallets. Of course, that's one of my favorite tests to see how fine the edge is and how much it likes cutting very fine, more difficult to cut substances. Because when you go through the middle, when you have a lot of layers, it does okay if you got a decent edge. But that bottom layer, if you got any edge problems, it'll hang up and tear on you. No problems whatsoever. It will hang up and tear. This thing kind of hung up and tore the whole time. It didn't like cutting that plastic, not through the middle, not through the bottom, not through the top. Like if I pulled and put some tension on it and I held it just right, I could get it to glide through back in this area a little bit farther, but up through here, no, it wasn't having it. So one of the big positives was the pocket clip. The dingus end of the pocket clip being raised this far got it over the hem of the pocket easily enough. The decent pull on it kept it there. And the space that's under the pocket clip, it went into my pocket just fine, and it stayed over the hem of the pocket, no problem whatsoever. The screws not being recessed didn't really present a major issue. But I will say, with the steel scales on the steel liners, these steel scales add a lot of weight, and it did make it kind of slippery to get it out of the pocket. More than once I had to go in there, and I had to try a couple of times. And usually what I was doing was getting my finger hooked under the pocket clip on the dingus end right here and pulling out off of that, which I'm not the world's biggest fan of that. You know, I'm not super bothered by steel scales as long as there's enough texturing on it that you can grab it easily enough. Now that being said, almost all the steel scales that I have encountered, they're slick. They are slicker than snot on a doorknob, and this is no exception. The detent on this held up pretty well, but, you know, if you push just hard enough to break the detent loose, it doesn't go all the way open, and you got to put a bit of extra sauce on there. Like, just breaking the detent open, no. So, like, the detent, it didn't bother me all that much, because I like throwing some wrist in it and getting a nice, loud, authoritative open anyways. But just knowing the detent was on the weaker side, it just kind of stuck in my brain and bothered me a little bit. You know, the detent's certainly strong enough to keep it closed. I didn't have any problems with it accidentally deploying in my pocket, but I did know it was there, and that bothered me just a little bit. You know, and other than that, like, I will say, after carrying a 4-inch blade for a week, this thing was definitely way easier to carry. Like, I tried to get stuff out of my pocket around it, and suddenly it was really easy, and I was like, wow, there's so much room in my pocket for activities. You know what? I had to go have a think about what I just said. I'm going to stand by it, but I had to go think about that for a second. So, yeah, I mean, a smaller knife, it did what smaller knife does, and it didn't take up real estate in the pocket. It was real easy to get stuff in and out of the pocket around it. I really enjoyed that part of it. You know, and that's the thing. When you get the 3-inch blades, you really, really have to have it designed well and nice and flat and thought out pretty well for easy carry in the pocket, especially if that pocket's going to share room with other stuff. Now, when you have knives that are getting down in the below 3-inch range, 2.5 inches, you don't have to think it out that hard. It's a small knife. It's going to do small knife things. I just ran myself out of breath walking upstairs and back for that bit. Oh, man. You guys. Yeah. All in at the end of the day. This thing is just mediocre. Now, this is a good beater knife, and this is a loner knife. I am going to put this in the box for a random roll live stream, a cardboard slayer, because I want to see if we got, like, it's D2, and it's cheap D2, and I'm very worried that we got another absolute donkey of a heat treatment like we've been getting. So I do want to check this thing out and see how the heat treatment on the steel is, because good heat treatment on the steel can make up for a lot of sins. Oh, it can make up for a lot of sins, especially if you can sharpen it and it keeps an edge for a while. Oh, man, that makes it a great beater knife. You know, a loner knife, it doesn't matter. Hey, what are you going to cut? I'm going to cut concrete with it. Don't ever ask me to borrow a knife again. Like I said, I'm one of those guys where it's like, nah, go buy your own. Go buy your own. They're not hard to buy. I mentioned that on the last one. But Yeah, this is very mediocre, very middle of the road. Nothing super, super offensive about it outside of the detent being a little weak, and I don't like how slippery the scales are. But other than that, it worked. You know, it worked. It did its job as a knife. I didn't really want to show it off to anybody, but, you know, it is what it is. You know, this is kind of the nuts and bolts of the channel. I love checking out stuff like this and seeing if we can find a diamond in the rough. In this case, we found a rhinestone in the other rhinestones. I don't know. I thought I could finish that joke off by the time I got there, but I couldn't. But yeah, very mediocre. This would be a decent impulse purchase to chuck in your toolbox, or again, a loner knife or a beater. But, you know, this would definitely not be my primary EDC, you know, for days on end, unless I sharpened it and it managed to hold an edge for an obscenely long time. And then I'd be impressed enough where it would be a regular carry. This may actually go in a toolbox. I may give this to a friend. I'm not sure yet. I'm looking forward to Cardboard Slayer. Like I said, I hope the heat treatment's good. I hope I don't have another absolute donkey of a heat treatment. So, yeah, I can't think of a lot else to say that I haven't already said about this thing. So, all that being said, thanks for looking at my crap. Subscribers, you guys are awesome. Y'all keep coming in. I appreciate you so much. If you haven't subscribed, please do. We got our live streams, regular videos. There's plenty of activities. Comments, I love some feedback. Let me know what you think about this thing. Let's say thanks to Saints EDC for making this happen for us. Of course, I got my Amazon shop linked. You don't have to use it, but it's the easiest way I've found to show you the cool stuff that I have found in the last couple of months. And all that being said, y'all have a nice day.